Hey friends, welcome to my YouTube channel. Don't forget to press the bell icon like thumbs up, share up right arrow, and subscribe red heart.
What happens ashamed or affiliate of the royal family thinks they can airing assimilate daytime television and amusement or admired host like their claimed servant. In aloof 43 seconds, Prince Harry would go from charming bedfellow to complete nightmare, unleashing a exact advance so shocking that it would leave Lorraine Kelly speechless and admirers above Britain reaching for their remotes in disbelief. The morning started like any added on the Lorraine show. The flat bashed with its accepted activity as aggregation members adjusted cameras and arrested sound levels. Lorraine Kelly sat abaft her iconic desk, reviewing her addendum one final time afore activity live. She had conducted bags of interviews over her decades-continued career. But today felt different. Today she would be sitting across from Prince Harry, and what should have been her accepted promotional babble was about to become the best explosive television moment of her absolute career. Good morning and acceptable to Lorraine. She began with her brand balmy smile, her Scottish emphasis anon putting viewers at affluence above the nation. I am absolutely captivated to be abutting this morning by Prince Harry, who is actuality to discuss his latest accommodating endeavours and his new life. Harry, acknowledge you so much for actuality with us today. Prince Harry confused in his chair, his posture already suggesting article was amiss. Gone was the amenable abode the public had developed acclimatized to seeing. Instead, there was a restriction in his shoulders, a binding about his eyes that Lorraine, with her years of experience account guests, immediately picked up on. Thank you for accepting me, Lorraine, he replied. Admitting his tone lacked the amore about expected from such an exchange, admitting I accept to say, I was assured a bit added from this setup. The blooming allowance was rather disappointing. Lorraine blinked, caught slightly off guard by the unexpected criticism. In all her years of hosting, she had rarely encountered a bedfellow who opened with complaints about the facilities. But any time the professional, she maintained her accord and pressed forward with an affable laugh. Well, I do apologize if our apartment weren't quite up to your accepted standards, she said. Her articulation still accustomed its characteristic amore admitting the odd beginning, but I am abiding our admirers are much added absorbed in audition about the admirable assignment you accept been doing with your assorted accommodating projects. Can you acquaint us about some of the initiatives you accept been absorption on recently? Harry's acknowledgement was immediate and sharp, acid through the studio air like a blade. Actually, Lorraine, I think we charge to abode something first. I was told this account would be conducted with able account for my position and status. Yet, actuality I am sitting in what feels like a budget afternoon allocution appearance setup. The words hit Lorraine like a concrete blow. In 40 years of broadcasting, she had never been spoken to with such arrant disrespect on her own show. The aggregation abaft the cameras exchanged shock glances, and even the usually abiding camera operators seemed to falter for a moment. I beg your pardon, Lorraine managed, her professional affectation bottomward aloof slightly to acknowledge 18-carat abashing and hurt beneath. Harry, I am not actually abiding what you mean. We accept consistently prided ourselves on accoutrement a welcoming environment for all our guests. And this is the aforementioned flat bureaucracy we use for everyone from Hollywood stars to world leaders. But Harry was not finished. His voice rose slightly, demography on an edge that fabricated anybody in the studio uncomfortable. That is actually the problem, Lorraine. I should not be treated like anybody else. I am a affiliate of the British aristocratic family, whether I am working or not. There should be certain standards, assertive protocols followed. The actuality that I had to airing through the same admission as your approved guests, sit in the aforementioned blooming room, use the same facilities, it is bluntly insulting. The studio fell into an uncomfortable silence. Lorraine, who had congenital her career on authoritative guests feel comfortable and audiences feel at home, found herself in actually uncharted territory. Her decades of acquaintance had taught her to handle difficult guests with grace. But annihilation had able her for this akin of arms from someone who had already been admired by the British public. Harry, she said carefully, her articulation abiding admitting the shock she was acutely feeling. I appetite to make abiding I accept what you are saying. Are you suggesting that you require appropriate analysis because of your birth? Because from area I sit, Everyone who comes on this appearance is treated with according account and dignity regardless of their accomplishments or status. The catechism seemed to ignite something in Harry. His face flushed slightly and his hands, which had been resting calmly on the armrest of his chair, began to action added animatedly. Equal treatment. Lorraine, do you have any abstraction who you are talking to? I have spent my absolute activity in account to this country. I accept served in the military. I accept accurate endless charitable causes. I accept accustomed aggregate to the British bodies, and yet actuality I am being treated like some accessory celebrity promoting their latest project. Lorraine felt her own accord alpha to fray at the edges, but her professionalism held firm. With respect, Harry, every guest on this appearance has their own accomplishments and their own adventure to tell. We accept had war veterans, charity workers, doctors who accept saved countless lives, agents who have changed communities. Anniversary actuality who sits in that armchair has contributed something admired to society. Your contributions are actually significant, but they do not baptize you to diminish the amount of others or to allege to me with such boldness in my own studio. The prince's acknowledgement was abrupt and cutting. Your studio, Lorraine, let me remind you of something. Afterwards people like me, afterwards the aristocratic family, without the belief and the admission we provide, shows like castigation would not exist. You accept congenital your career on the backs of bodies like me, interviewing us, discussing our lives, profiting from our stories. The atomic you could do was show some acknowledgement instead of lecturing me about respect. The allegation afraid in the air like a baneful cloud. Lorraine had been in broadcasting continued abundant to know when a band had been crossed, and this was it. Her eyes, which had remained kind and accommodating throughout the exchange, now showed a beam of steel that longtime admirers would admit as her absolute actuality reached. I charge. To stop you appropriate there, she said, her voice taking on a compactness that commanded attention. In 30 years of accomplishing this job, I accept never, and I beggarly never, built my career on anyone's back. I have worked every distinct day to acquire the trust of admirers by administering fair, honest interviews and by alleviative every single bedfellow with the aforementioned akin of professionalism and courtesy. If you believe that assuming you basal human decency and assured the aforementioned in return is somehow below your station, then perhaps you accept abandoned what true service actually means. The words seemed to bang Harry like a concrete blow. But instead of abetment down, they only served to ammunition his acrimony further. His face darkened, and for a moment, the carefully complete accessible persona that he had maintained for years completely burst away, revealing something animal underneath. How dare you, he said, his articulation bottomward to a dangerous buzz that somehow carried more annoyance than if he had shouted. How dare you sit there and address me about service? You accept no abstraction what I have sacrificed, what I accept accustomed up. You read from a teleprompter and ask softball questions to celebrities, and you anticipate that gives you the appropriate to judge me? Lorraine acquainted every eye in the studio aloft her. The crew, the producers, anybody was watching to see how she would handle this unprecedented situation. In her decades of broadcasting, she had faced down politicians aggravating to contrivance questions, celebrities throwing tantrums, and even the casual bashed guest, but nothing quite like this raw affectation of entitled fury from Addition who should accept known better. Harry, she said, her voice remaining appreciably abiding admitting the tension crackling through the air. I'm not anticipation your account or your sacrifices. What I'm acclamation is the way you are allotment to conduct yourself right here, appropriate now in this moment. You came assimilate my appearance and instead of engaging in the chat we had planned. You accept spent the absolute time complaining about aggregate from the green allowance to the way you accept been treated admitting the actuality that you have been apparent annihilation but addressed since you arrived. But Harry was above reason now. His aristocratic training seemingly abandoned entirely. He leaned advanced in his chair, pointing a feel anon at Lorraine in a action that would accept been considered abominable from anyone, let alone a affiliate of the aristocratic family. Courtesy, he spat. You alarm this courtesy. I should accept been greeted personally by you ashamed I arrived. There should accept been able security arrangements made. The car that picked me up was not alike a able luxury vehicle. Do you accept that I am taking time out of my abundantly busy schedule to arise on your little morning appearance, and this is how I am repaid? The flat audience, which had been aside agilely amid themselves, fell into complete silence. Alike the most acclimatized aggregation members, who had seen their allotment of affecting moments over the years, stood arctic in disbelief. This was not the Prince Harry they thought they knew. This was not the man who had charmed the apple with his military service and accommodating work. Lorraine took her abysmal breath, and in that moment, she fabricated a accommodation that would define not aloof this interview, but her entire legacy as a broadcaster. She was not going to ashamed down, not activity to coddle this behavior, not activity to pretend that being built-in into royalty, alibi treating people with contempt. Let me be very clear about something, she said, her Scottish emphasis acceptable added pronounced as her affections began to surface. You are actually appropriate that you took time out of your agenda to be here. And I took time out of my agenda to prepare for this interview, to analysis your projects, to anticipate of thoughtful questions that would acquiesce you to share your bulletin with our viewers. My team took time to adapt the studio, to arrange the lighting, to accomplish sure everything was absolute for your appearance. She paused, absolution her words bore in a fore continuing with devastating calm. But here's what you seem to accept forgotten, Harry. None of us owe you annihilation above basal human decency and able courtesy, both of which you accept accustomed in abundance. Your appellation does not accord you the right to amusement bodies as if they abide solely for your convenience. Your bearing does not accomplish you inherently added valuable than anyone abroad who walks through that door. Harry's face was now ablaze red with acrimony and his easily were actually shaking as he absorbed the accoutrements of his chair. You accept actually no abstraction what you are talking about. You sit actuality in your adequate little flat with your comfortable little activity allurement your comfortable little questions and you think that makes you able to understand what it agency to backpack the weight of aristocratic responsibility. Royal responsibility, Lorraine repeated. And for the aboriginal time, there was a agenda of incredul in her voice. Is that what you call this behavior? Is this how you fulfill your aristocratic responsibility? By coming assimilate a television appearance and insulting the host, accusatory about every distinct thing, and acting as if the world owes you appropriate analysis simply because of who your grandmother was. The mention of the Astern Queen seemed to hit her assumption that alike Harry's acrimony could not actually override. For aloof a moment, article flickered in his eyes. Perhaps her acceptance of how far he had fallen from the accepted she had set. But if there was any abashment there, it was quickly active beneath addition beachcomber of indignation. Do not, he said, his voice now assent to a akin that everyone in the flat could clearly hear. Do not assume to accompany my family into this. You apperceive annihilation about the pressures, the expectations, the constant analysis that comes with being born into the aristocratic family. Every single day of my activity has been lived beneath a microscope. Every accommodation analyzed, every aberration magnified. And now you sit there, addition who has never had to deal with annihilation added arduous than a difficult guest. And you cartel to judge how I handle that pressure. Lorraine had heard enough. The able affectation that she had maintained throughout her career. The adept access that had served her so able-bodied in bags of interviews assuredly fell abroad completely. What emerged was not the Polish television presenter, but the working-class Scottish woman who had fought her way to the top of British broadcasting through arduous determination and integrity. You appetite to allocution about pressure, Harry? Let me acquaint you about pressure. Burden is alive your way up from bounded radio to national television with annihilation but aptitude and hard assignment to await on. Burden is conducting alive interviews, alive that millions of bodies are watching and judging your every word. Burden is dealing with guests who anticipate that their status gives them the appropriate to amusement you like clay while still advancement your professionalism and accomplishing your job. She leaned advanced slightly, her eyes never leaving his face. But you apperceive what the biggest burden is. The burden to maintain your candor ashamed addition is trying to annoy you into accepting behavior that you apperceive is wrong. And that is actually what you are aggravating to do appropriate now. Harry was on his feet before she had accomplished speaking, his chair rolling astern from the force of his movement. That is it, he declared, his articulation alveolate through the studio. I'm not activity to sit actuality and be lectured by some morning television host who thinks she knows bigger than me. This account is over. But Lorraine was not about to let him accept the last word. She remained seated, her posture straight and dignified, attractive up at the prince, who was now aerial over her in what could alone be declared as an alarming stance. "Sit down, Harry," she said quietly, but with such authority that alike he seemed momentarily taken aback. "You capital to come on this show. You agreed to this interview and you are activity to accomplishment it like an adult. Running abroad ashamed someone challenges your behavior is not very royal, is it?" The claiming afraid in the air like a gauntlet befuddled down. Harry stared at her for a continued moment, his chest ascent and falling with barely controlled rage. The flat was so quiet that the hum of the cameras seemed deafeningly loud. "You anticipate you can order me around," he said, his voice dripping with disdain. "You anticipate you can speak to me like I am some accepted guest who has to chase your rules. I am Prince Harry of Wales. I accept met presidents, prime ministers, world leaders. I accept dined with active of state and been accustomed by royalty across the globe. And you, a daytime television presenter from Scotland, think you can acquaint me what to do." The words were like a bang above the face to anybody in the studio. But Lorraine did not flinch. If anything, she seemed to abound added composed as Harry became more unhinged. "Yes," she said simply. "Yes, I can acquaint you what to do because this is my studio. This is my appearance and you are my guest. And as my guest, you will appearance basal account or you will leave. Those are your choices, Harry. There is no third advantage area you get to break and abide behaving like a spoiled child." Harry's aperture accessible and closed like a angle asthmatic for air. In his absolute life, no one had any time spoken to him with such direct, unflinching honesty. Palace quarters had consistently been differential. Aggressive admiral had shown able account for his rank, and even his harshest critics in the press had maintained some akin of formal courtesy. But actuality was Lorraine Kelly sitting calmly in her chair, attractive at him as if he were annihilation added than an unruly jailbait accepting a tantrum. "You have no abstraction who you are ambidextrous with," he assuredly managed to say, his articulation now taking on an aggressive accent that made several aggregation associates footfall back instinctively. "I could abort your career with a distinct buzz call. I could make abiding you never assignment in television again. Do you accept that? Do you understand the affectionate of ability and influence I still have?" The threat landed in the flat like a bomb, and for a moment, anybody captivated their breath. This was it, the moment that would ascertain everything. Would Lorraine back bottomward in the face of such a blatant attempt at intimidation? Would she apologize and try to bland things over to save her career? Instead, she did something that no one, atomic of all Harry, expected. She laughed. Not a nervous beam or a affected chuckle, but a genuine affable beam that seemed to come from abysmal in her belly. "Oh, Harry," she said, wiping a breach from her eye. "You really accept no abstraction how this works, do you? You anticipate television careers are built on the approval of bodies like you? You anticipate my admirers tune in every morning because they achievement to see me bowing and abrading to advantaged guests." She stood up now, analogous his height and attractive him anon in the eye. "Let me explain article to you about power. Real power. Absolute ability is not inherited. It is not accustomed to you because of who your parents were. Absolute ability is earned through respect, through alleviative people with dignity, through building relationships based on alternate assurance and understanding." Harry approved to interrupt, but Lorraine captivated up a duke that somehow commanded blackout added finer than any aristocratic action anytime could. "You want to apperceive what absolute ability looks like?" she continued, her articulation growing stronger with anniversary word. "Absolute ability is sitting in that armchair every morning and connecting with accustomed bodies who are facing extraordinary challenges. Absolute ability is giving a articulation to those who usually go unheard. Absolute ability is architecture a career based on candor and authenticity, not on accidents of birth." She confused closer to him and admitting the actuality that he had several inches of acme on her, he actually seemed to compress ashamed slightly. "And you apperceive what the best powerful thing of all is, Harry? The ability to look someone in the eye. Addition who is trying to annoy and alarm you and tell them actually what you anticipate of their behavior afterwards, abhorrence or hesitation. Harry's face had gone through several blush changes during her speech, assuredly clearing on an anemic white that fabricated his beforehand even assume balmy by comparison. Ashamed he spoke, his articulation was shaking with almost controlled fury. How dare you allege to me this way? How dare you angle there and address me about power and account ashamed you are nothing more than a bigoted television presenter who got lucky? You will regret this, Lorraine. I affiance you, you will regret every chat you accept, aloof said. But Lorraine was not finished. She had spent 30 years in broadcasting, 30 years of actuality, able and adept and measured in her responses. Today, all of that was activity out the window, and it felt actually liberating. The only thing I regret, she said, her voice carrying the weight of decades of experience and wisdom, is that it took this continued for addition to acquaint you the truth about yourself. You came in here expecting to be advised like royalty, but you behaved like annihilation. But you been rude, entitled, demanding, and thoroughly unpleasant. You have insulted me, my staff, and this show. And now you are aggressive me because I had the adventurousness to apprehend you to act like a appropriate animal being. She walked over to her board and apprenticed a button that every bedfellow alarming hearing. It was the arresting to security, but added than that, it was the complete of a television career potentially catastrophe in absolute time. Security will escort you out now, she said with adverse calm. This interview is over. Not because you declared it to be, but because I am ending it. You are no best acceptable on this show. And frankly, afterwards this display, I doubtable you will not be welcome on abounding others either. Harry stood there for a moment, attractive around the flat as if he could not quite believe what was happening. The crew members abhorred his gaze. The cameras kept rolling and Lorraine stood by her desk with the quiet address of someone who had aloof taken an angle for everything she believed in. When security arrived, Harry did not resist, but as he was actuality led against the exit, he angry ashamed one final time with a look of authentic venom. This is not over, Lorraine, he alleged out, his voice echoing through the studio. You no idea what you aloof done. Lorraine watched him go, again angry ashamed to the camera with the address of a true professional. Well, she said to the viewers at home, her balmy smile returning as if annihilation had happened. That actually was not what we had planned for this morning. But sometimes these things appear in a live television. We will be appropriate ashamed afterwards this break with an admirable articulation about community gardens in Yorkshire. And with that, she sat ashamed bottomward at her desk, straightened her papers, and able to continue with her appearance as if she had not just made television.
Thank you for watching my video.